Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Manufacturing Workflows and Technologies, Your Questions Answered. This webinar is brought to you by LiveLab Learning, which is a subsidiary of Academic Corporation, a wholly owned applied software company created to provide world-class training. This is Marcia Tucker and I'm delighted to be your moderator today. And since we will be answering questions, we would encourage you to submit your questions online earlier than later. But I want you to be advised of a couple of things. Our headquarters in Atlanta will be having a National Manufacturing Day where we will celebrate manufacturing. It will be a happy hour, October the 1st. It will be at Five Seasons Brewing Company. And by the way, you should be able to be seeing this on your screen from 4:30 to 7. So if you have any additional questions, please call me. And my contact information is at the bottom. So we hope to see you there. We have an upcoming webinar where we will be discussing having connected manufacturing workflows, the power of CAD plus data management plus simulation. That'll be coming up October the 29th from 12:30 to 1:30. You will be able to register for that on our LiveLab Learning website, or please feel free to contact me and I'll be happy to take care of your registration. We also are going to start right now, and I'm going to turn this over. We have a panel of our technical staff in manufacturing who are experts in the field. They have all been with applied software a long time. Many have taught at Autodesk University. So Dennis, if you'll take over from here, that'd be great.
All right, thank you, Marcia. Today what we're going to do is we've kind of accumulated questions over the past few webinars, and we actually kind of combined them with some of our most common support cases that come up, and we've grouped the questions together where it made sense under a topics of the heading just good things to know about AutoCAD and specifically and Inventor. So myself, Jason, and Scott will be covering different topics and different aspects of these types of good things to know. First thing we're going to be looking at is some things within AutoCAD. We've got a few options there to take a look at. One of things that are, again, like I said, good things to know about and be aware of. Particularly for those of you that like to personalize your interface, some of the things that we'll look at, again, show you where they're at is the reset settings to default. We've learned some things about images, and we'll talk a little bit about the workspaces in AutoCAD as well as some ribbon personalization inside of Inventor. So with that, I'm going to switch my, my visualization around a little bit here. Hopefully everybody will be able to see this now, and I'm waiting for my, okay, let's see. I was not expecting it to go into pause mode, which it has. Hold on a second for everybody. There we go. Okay, now, what we're looking at here is AutoCAD. So taking some of these ideas of good things that that we have learned and become aware of inside of AutoCAD specifically. First off, let me jump down and kind of orient you a little bit here. I'm bringing up a file here. This is the AutoCAD Applied Software logo here that I've got, and I've already loaded that into Paint, standard old Paint inside of from your Windows install. Got the bitmap here, and there's actually two different ways now that you can bring a bitmap or a JPEG, any type of image file directly inside of AutoCAD. And as maybe you're kind of getting alluded to here, there's a copy and paste option as well as the image insert. So if I come to my copy paste option, I'll stretch this out a little bit and do a select all and then copy. I can click back over to my AutoCAD now and do a Control V and paste that directly in. Now it's asking me some things here about OLE size, particularly to support the annotative scaling, but in this case I'm not going to set up anything like that, so I'm just going to say OK. So with that, I've got the image inside of my AutoCAD, and then the other way that you can do it, and the way we've been doing it most times in the past, was to do our, similar to bringing in an XREF, where we just go and we grab the JPEG, bitmap, whichever it might be, and we say open, we get the standard insertion dialog box. I'll say okay to that, and whoops, I missed it somewhere along the line. Let's see, JPEG, open. For some reason it's not attaching it in there, so I'll grab it again. There we go. And now I will say specify on screen, and well, look at there, folks, my attach option is not working at this point. Let me try it one other way real quick. Oh, that's the reason, it's right there. So let me detach it and try that one more time. Okay, click attach image. Okay, seems to have lost a path on me, but let me get that straightened back out. And there we go. Nothing can go wrong. There we go. Now it's showing up there. Let that. Perfect. Okay, I'll scale it up, kind of standard process here. And there's the two images now, as you can see on the screen. Look identical to one another. I'll hit my save button. And what I'm going to do is close this AutoCAD drawing, so you can actually see the preview now listed right up here on my screen. And what I'm going to do now is drop down to my folders again, and I'm just going to rename this logo real quick. I'm going to rename it Logo 1. And when I click on this drawing now, what you'll see is the black hole over on the right side of the image insert, while the copy paste is embedded in the DWG. Now, we have run into cases due to the way operating systems may work with the copy paste, that the copy paste is not, but for the most part it does work as I'm showing here. The main thing is that if you do find yourself going back to the logo insert option, when it comes time to send that out to someone, you will want to use your e-transmit option to take that out and set it up to actually compile and bring the image file with it, so that when you send it out, they've got everything. Now, the other thing we're going to look at real quick here is down at the bottom. Actually, for this, I want to switch real quick. Y'all bear with me. I just realized I've got the wrong thing loaded here, so I want to do this in 2016. Now, kind of setting this up again. Let me bring my folders back up here and tell you what I have done. First off, I have gone to this very long, ugly path that you see here that's down the user, app, data, roaming, Autodesk folder, AutoCAD 2016 in this case, all the way down to support. And I've grabbed the customized CUI file. So as I come down here, it's this one here. Now this one will automatically load as a default load in your AutoCAD install. But the reason is I'm grabbing it is a good starting point. If you just go to do a customization, oftentimes it will get buried into this file, and a lot of times I want to know where that menu file is, and I want it to be a little bit closer for me to go and grab. So with that, I've got over here now that very file. I've renamed it Webinar CUIX here, so that I've got a unique name to it now. And so when I go into a new drawing, if you've done this before, there's a menu load, and you'll see there's the custom file. Now, if I try to browse at this point and load in that file that I just copied over, and do my load here, I get a conflict, because the webinar's heading name inside of the menu file itself is called customize as well. So what I need to do is actually unload the menu loaded automatic from the install of AutoCAD. I have to unload it and then reload the webinar one. Okay, now it still calls it custom there, but I'm going to correct that here in a minute. Now, where we go to correct this is down into the workspace settings, and it's a surprise to me, but I still run into a lot of folks that are not familiar with the workspaces. And so we've set up to do some unique things here with our workspaces. Now, you could have done all this without going and grabbing that menu file, but particularly if you're more on the administration side, you want to centralize and do things in particular menus that people are loading all up, maybe make an enterprise menu, then you'll want to go through a couple of those steps there as I showed you, to start with a nice fresh menu file that you can begin to put all of your customized things into. Now, you'll notice that there's, by default in the vanilla AutoCAD, there's 3 different workspaces here. Drafting and annotation, probably the most common, as you can see that I've got loaded up there right now, but I can go to 3D Basics. You'll see my ribbons and all have changed up here at the top, and then I can go to 3D Modeling, and it all changes over to the 3D Modeling as well. Back to drafting and annotation. Now, the way I see the name here, by the way, is I've got Display Workspace Label. That's one of those things that for user preferences, you might want to see that label. When you change workspaces, let's put it as the 90% rule. AutoCAD remembers what workspace you put it on, and so if you close and reopen, it will reopen back to that same workspace. Occasionally, you might have to toggle to one of the other ones and then back to the one you want to get it to refresh. Sometimes AutoCAD does get confused and might forget it. Particularly if you're in a vertical product like Plant 3D, you will find yourself working in these workspaces quite often. Now, in this case, I can go to my Save Current As, and in this I will be calling it Webinar, and I'll save that. So now I've got a workspace called Webinar. It has become the active one, and it's exactly like the drafting and annotation. Now, on the workspace settings, you can actually turn off, if you've never used the 3D ones, you can uncheck them, then they will not show up. If I say OK now, you'll see those are just the 2 now that are listed. Also on workspace settings, you've got 2 options down here at the bottom: do not save changes to workspace or automatically save changes. My recommendation is the top option, do not save changes to workspaces. In other words, I want to tell it when I want to save a workspace and not have AutoCAD just doing it arbitrarily as you move along. Now, things you can do with workspaces, and this gets involved with your menu up here, your ribbon area, and it's basically things that you want to see. So if you put your cursor over into a right-hand area of the ribbon, into a gray area, if you right-click, you've got different tabs that you can turn on and off, as well as showing different panels. Now, in this case, I'm on my Home tab, and so all of my panels are turned on. If I go to my Show tabs, you'll see 3D2s and Visualize is not turned on. And maybe in my interface, I never want to see the featured apps. So I might check that, and you'll see now that the features apps up here in the top has been turned off. Now, remember what I said about this setting. Do not save changes to workspace. Well, at this point now, if I want AutoCAD to remember that change, I do Save Current As again and just overwrite the existing workspace. It'll ask me, do I want to overwrite it? It's fine. Now, if I go back to drafting and annotation, you see there's the featured apps. But if I come back down now and go to Webinar, it remembers that I turned that feature app off. And so again, even on different tabs up here, if you decide, oh, I'm on the A360, I can either turn that off. I could also turn off particular panels. So maybe the settings sync, I might want to just turn that panel off if I never use it, so that I simplify my user interface a little bit. Once again, come down, do the Save As, Webinar, save it, replace it. Now, if I go back to drafting and annotation under the A360, there is the setting syncs. But if I go back to my Webinar now, that workspace remembers that I turned it off. Now, there's a lot of folks out there that still like to use certain toolbars. My recommendation is get used to the ribbon. It's not going away. It's here to stay, or at least until Microsoft says to Autodesk it's time to change. The classic interface that we used for years and years and years is slowly but surely going away, and I suspect one of these days, if I had to look into my crystal ball, Autodesk will even take the capability of going back to that classic interface. Will probably take it away completely. But another item that oftentimes folks are not aware of is they can come up to their quick access toolbar and turn on the menu bar. And so this is the old menu bar that we were used to working with in the earlier versions of AutoCAD before the ribbon came about. And of course, on the Tools menu bar is where our toolbars are, and there's our AutoCAD toolbars. So similarly, if there was a group of toolbars that I like to work with, and I'll just bring up here a couple of them. Okay, AutoCAD. I got the layers too, and then I'll get the modify too. They still work, folks. You can still move them up and dock them into your borders and things like that. So you can dock them to the left, dock them to the right. But once again, if I want AutoCAD to remember that I want those toolbars there, I go back to my workspace, save current as, and save it, replace it. Now once again, if I toggle back over to drafting and annotation, you see those toolbars are gone, featured apps is back, and then when I go back to webinar and click on that one, once again, the toolbars are come back up for me, as well as the menu bar across the top. So it has remembered everything that I have saved inside of that workspace. Now, the final kind of deep areas that you can go into customize it. And you can see here, now we get into the actual CUI or the menu file of AutoCAD, and we're doing more customization. Of course, there's the webinar workspace, which is typically saved in whatever is considered the primary menu that is loaded inside of your AutoCAD session. So your other menus are listed down at the bottom as partial loads. And you'll notice there is that custom one listed right there. Well, if I click on that, you'll see that the file name over here to the right says Webinar CUIX, even though it says custom there. So this is where, as an administrator, you start changing things. So I'll change that one to Webinar. I'll change the name here to Webinar. Okay, so now I'm starting to make this unique to my install of AutoCAD and unique to the systems that I want to do. Now, in the All Customization File section, we can now go down and highlight strictly the webinar menu, and we can go in and create custom commands directly inside of that menu. Now, here real quickly, I'm going to come up here, and I'm just going to call this one Webinar Example. As the name of my command. I'm going to type in a quick little Lisp routine to show the alert box. Okay. One of my little tricks is space oftentimes is used as an enter, but I prefer a semicolon. Reason is I can see a semicolon while I can't see spaces per se. Now, small images, image files that go along with it. We do have a selection to choose from here that are embedded. However, what if I don't see the one that I would like to use here? Maybe I have a custom one I want to do. Here again is another idea of how you can get images in. Now, if I highlight one, they always kind of say here export, import. You even have an edit function. But with this button right here, up here on the next to the Save button, if I hit that, it brings up the Image Manager. And in this case, I can go into the folder where my image file is stored. In this case, I've got an ASCII logo bitmap sitting there. And I can bring that directly into the menu. Again, it's embedded in the menu file rather than being an external image file that I have to point to. If any of you have ever had problems when you're putting these things together and you're getting the clouds as your icon rather than the icon that you pointed to, the bitmap, this is one way you can get it embedded in. You can pass this menu around to everybody and then they will have this image. Now, the image is, by the way, for anybody that does editing in Paint, the image is 16 pixels by 16 pixels. I cheat a lot on that. I always end up taking some other bitmap that I do like, and then I just size it. Okay, I resize it to get it down to what I want it to be. But what we'll do is we'll say open here. Okay, I can highlight it, see the little preview of it, and then say OK. And that brings it directly into the menu. So now I've got one down here that I can use for my image, okay, for this particular command. Now, I'm big on hitting apply. Every time I do a little bit, I'll hit apply to go ahead and get that part set. Now, the next thing is up here in your menu file, in this case our webinar menu file, I'm going to add a new tab. I'm going to call this one ASTI, okay, for applied software. And then I need a new panel to put that command into. And so I'll call this one webinar. And then I've got one row in it here, folks. If you right-click on the row 1, you could add another panel. So you can, in a sense, have multiple panels into your toolbar or your tool tab that's across the top of the ribbon. I could add in multiple rows, subpanels, and different styles of buttons. For instance, if any of you have worked with the circle command or the arc command here, you know it's a broken button. The down arrow means there's other things. So that would be, for instance, the drop-down concept. So with this now, I've got panels and a tab specifically for the webinar and a panel specifically for the webinar. And I want to put my command on that panel. So all I do is just pick, hold, and drop it with a little arrow. Look over here. Everything looks good. You've got a couple of settings on that button. I'm going to change it to large with text vertical. And just kind of looking down the line, other things that you can do is put some little descriptions on it, some little help. You can reference help files. On and on it goes that you can do with this to customize it more to your liking. Now again, I'm going to say apply here, and the next step we want to do is get that one into our workspace. So I'm going to go back to my all customization files, hit my webinar, and say as my current workspace. And I'll say customize the workspace, expand my webinar, expand my menu, my ribbon, and I'll check it, and look over here, it has been added to my workspace. I'll say done, apply. Now, one last thing you can do before I leave this box is you can then come to this transfer box, so that I could actually load up my webinar CUIX, grab that webinar workspace, and transfer it over to my webinar CUIX. Okay, you can do that so as to save you maybe a little bit of time on setting up the workspace when you implement this menu, so that you can then transfer it over into their main workspace listing. Once they get the menu files in place. So now we let it think a moment. It kind of recompiles the menu up here. If we look now, we've got an ASCII tab, and somewhere along the line I missed something. So let's just make sure this is one of those things that sometimes just getting it to update will be enough, but I may have actually missed a step. There's my ASCII. Okay, let me go back. Got ahead of myself. Let me go back in here real quick. There's the ribbon tabs. Let me make sure I saved it. Yes, okay, I know what I did. I forgot to put it into the tab itself. Okay, so let's bear with me. Go back to my ribbon. There's my panel. I created my panel, but I forgot to put it on the tab. So you just pick, hold, drag, and drop your panel onto the tab that you wanted. Say okay now, all the way back. And now we should have a button there that will bring up the alert box, and we have our customizations done to, or personalization, I should say, done to our user interface, giving us access to more than just turning panels on and off out of the box of AutoCAD. Now, similarly, inside of Inventor, you do have some capabilities as well of working with a customization of the panel up at the top, okay, your ribbons and all. You can right-click in the gray area, much like you did with AutoCAD. Ribbon appearance, normal, text off. You can turn off all the text if you got to to the point where you know what all the icons are. You can have some different settings there. Always keep in mind this little white button here in the ribbon. As I toggle that, it changes how those are laid out. And you've also got the show panels options where you can turn different panels on and off, as well as add custom user commands. One of my ones I like is as far as underneath my plane generation, I use the angle to plane about an edge quite a bit, where I'll go in there, I'll select plane, I'll select the edge, I'll say change that to 45, and that creates that particular plane. But you'll notice it doesn't float to the top. So one of those things I will actually go into my customize user interface here, and then I will go down and find that particular command. Let me go in here and get my list right. Whoops. Bear with me. There it is, 3D model tab. There we go. And I'll scroll down. I'll find the particular command I'm after, which is to rotate a plane across the edge. I'll get there in a minute. There we go. And then I'll add it in to my menu up here so that it's quick and easy for me to get to. Also, one other final thing that you'll run into quite often is if you lose your Vault menu file up here at the top, there are places inside, I'm sorry, hold on a minute, I think is it here? Okay, I've lost where it is. I might let Jason show you that one so that we can move on here, but there's kind of a hidden interface here for being able to sometimes get that Vault menu brought back up. So at this point, I think I'll take it and turn it over to Jason, who will be showing you a few other good things to know about Inventor customization. Okay, Jason, I'm going to change presenter, and you are now presenting.
All right, thank you, Dennis. So let me get this pulled up here. So continuing on with good things to know, we are actually going to start out with talking about service packs and updates. Where can I get these? How do I know what I already have installed? Also, within the Inventor software itself, we're going to be talking about quite a few different application options that we have received questions about, people just wanting to know how to do. Also, I'll talk about a nice little trick about constraints. Sometimes when sketching, you might get some constraints that are being added, which in your design intent, you're not wanting those to be placed on your geometry. And then to finish up, we'll talk about what you can assist if you call in for support, to diagnose and troubleshoot problems, how we can go in and actually get your system information, how you can get it quickly and send it to us, and that just helps us address your needs and see what possibly can be the issue and hopefully to resolve that issue quickly. So first of all, let's go ahead, and I'm going to first start out in the control panel and programs and features. So you'll notice up to the top left, this is where I can view installed updates. Okay, so if you're wondering if you're missing an update, you know how we always want to have the latest and greatest because Autodesk is continually improving our software. So we just want to make sure that we have everything that we need. Now there's a couple ways that we can look at the updates that are available. The first one that I'm going to show you, it is called the Autodesk Application Manager. Now I have mine to where it automatically starts up on boot up of my computer. So you might have possibly toggled that setting off by accident and just forgot about that this is available. This was available back in the 2015 release. So let's go ahead and open this. and I can click on Update Software, and this is where it would list any updates that you don't have. It would actually show that if it's installed or not installed. You can see here that I try to stay up to date, so I've got checks on everything in here. Also, within this, you can sort. If you don't want to install certain ones, you can sort by severity, and that would show the ones that really need to be installed. Also, let's say that your IT has it to where you don't have the application manager on your machine. So where else can I go to find these updates? Well, where we can go is actually to Autodesk.com. And if you click on the menu and drop down to Downloads, and here you'll notice that I have Updates and Service Packs. And this location is for all of your Autodesk products. So for instance, let's say that I want to look at Inventor products, and then we can filter it by selecting a particular version that we have. So let's say if I want to go to 2015. So you'll see that we have a list of service packs and also hot fixes. So those are the two places where you can go to download those. Now, continuing on, I want to jump over into Inventor itself. And let's talk about a couple things here. Now, you know, as we get older, our eyesight is not as good as it used to be, so we need all the help that we can get. So, for instance, let's talk about annotation scale. You'll notice here on my dimensions, they're quite small, so we do have the capability of changing that. So, for instance, if I go to Application Options, and on my General tab here in the center right column, I can crank this up to whatever, you know, you can play around with it and get a suitable size that you're wanting. So let's just see the difference here. One thing you will notice whenever I change this scale is my triad's going to change as well. So let's go maybe to 2. So you notice how that got larger. Also, whenever I go into my sketch, notice how my dimensions got larger as well. Just a nice little tidbit to make things a little bit more readable whenever you're working and sketching. The next thing that we had a question about was appearance settings. By default, Inventor shows shaded with edges. I mean, just shaded. So you probably got into the habit of possibly going up here to your View tab and changing your visual style to shaded with edges every time that you have a model. So if that's the way that you prefer this, we can set the default. So for instance, let me change it back. I'm going back into the application options. This one here is underneath the display tab. Now I do want to set this to use application settings. So whenever I do that, I'll click on settings, and here's where I can set the default for the visual style. So I'm going to set it shaded with edges. Now the thing is, it will not take effect until you close out your model and then reopen it, or it'll continue each time you start a new part or assembly. So let's close this out, and I'll go ahead and reopen this, and notice that I have my model showing as shaded with edges. And this can be done for any other of the visual styles, whichever one you prefer. Just go into the display tab and the application options and change your settings to the preferred default. Now another thing that was asked is how can I change my mouse wheel zoom behavior? Maybe you had it a certain way in AutoCAD and you'd like to have that zoom direction the same as AutoCAD. So we can change that as well. So here, within the Display tab, once again, notice down here I have a checkbox to reverse direction. So if you're particular about keeping your AutoCAD and your Inventor in sync with the direction that your mouse wheel scrolls, this is where you would do it. Another question that was asked was in regards to adding a background image, possibly with a maybe your company's logo within your graphics window here. So what we can do is within the Colors tab, you'll notice over here to the right, I can choose whether it's one color, gradient, which gradient is the default, or I can actually choose a background image. Now, key things here, you can create your own in pretty much any image editing software that you have, just as long as you can save it out as a PNG. So I've already created one, and if I go and open this, these here, if you notice, these are minus the first two. These are out-of-the-box images that comes with your software. So you got some nice ones in here that you can play around with, and these are actually located in your users, public documents, Autodesk, Inventor 2016, and then background. So that's where I ended up saving the image that I created. So I'm going to grab my applied software image. So we have that, and I'm going to apply it once again. And then now you see that that logo will always be here. Now, you're probably asking, why would they want that? Well, think about if they needed to take a screenshot or something like that to share with a client or internally, and they wanted their logo on it. So this will assist in doing that. Now, one key thing when creating that image is the size of the image. So a good size would be 1276, that's pixels, by 922. So that's a good size to fill up the entire graphics area here. Now, another thing that we have, and I'm going to change a setting real quick just so you see what I'm talking about. So in here, so if you're using or going in to create a new sketch, let's say on this face, notice whenever I started that sketch, all these edges automatically got projected. All right, so most of the time it's really a user preference, but for me personally, I like to project the things that I really only need to use to create my geometry. So for instance, we'll go ahead and delete that sketch, and let's go back in and toggle that off. Okay, now before I show you what this does, you'll notice another setting that I always keep checked, and this is to auto project the part origin on Sketch Create. So that one I will keep, but this one I will leave off. So now whenever I go in and start my sketch, notice I have my project origin point, and then I can just go through and utilize the project geometry command and just project only the entities that I need. Now, one thing that comes up a bunch, and let's start a new part file, is constraints. And by default, we have where we have inferred constraints and persistent constraints. Okay, so you can go in and turn off the certain ones that you want or don't want, but I just like to keep them on all the time, because you'll notice whenever I'm sketching, notice I have that vertical constraint that's being added automatically. So I go over it and notice I have my perpendicular constraint being added there. So if you are wanting to sketch and you're not wanting these to be placed while sketching, the trick is when you're in the command, as I am right now, if you hold down Control while you're sketching, notice when I move this line around, it's not trying to apply those constraints. So what this does is this allows me to truly freehand, like so, and I have a little bit more control as the user to come in here and add the constraints that I want to add. And this all depends on your design intent, how the geometry needs to move and how it needs to work. Okay, so let's talk about being able to get some hardware information that can, help expedite your needs whenever you call in for support. If you're having issues with your software or anything like that, some things that can really assist us. And I'm going to show you two different ways. Now, the first way that I'm going to show you is in the application options on the hardware tab. You'll notice that I have a diagnostics button. Now, the key thing is here, to be able to run this diagnostics, you need to have some kind of file open. So right now you'll notice I have just the part file. So whenever I run this, you'll notice what it says down here at the bottom. Click the OK button, and this will be placed on my clipboard. So if I click OK and if I open Notepad and I paste that, this is the information that we get. This is all about your system. You'll notice that it starts out showing everything that loads in Inventor, your build and release that you're currently using. So all kinds of good things that really helps the support guys out. Another way that we can do this as well, if we possibly need maybe just a little bit more information from you, we would actually request that you send us an NFO file, and that's just a system information file. And the way that I can obtain that is if I start my run, and I'm going to type in MS Info 32. And this is what I get. Okay, and notice that we have different categories and subcategories over here that we can go in and look at. All right, so what you would do is just save this out, and when we actually get this file, I've saved it to my desktop, so this is the file that you would email to us, and then when we open it, it's going to look just like whenever I launch that run command. So we'll be able to go in, and really this gives us a lot of useful information to help troubleshoot whatever type of issue that you're having. Now, with that being said, well, one other thing before I turn it over to Scott is Dennis mentioned the in regards to the vault. If you ever run into the issue that the vault tab is not showing in Inventor, this is where you go to fix this. So the Manage tab, well, actually the Tools tab, go to Add-ins, and in here, I don't see what I'm looking for now. It's called the EDM. So I'm going to right-click somewhere in the blank area, and I'm going to select Show Hidden Members. So here we go, our got the EDM add-in. You want to make sure that that is automatic and loaded, and that will bring back up your Vault tab. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Scott Hallmark. Okay.
All right, great. Thank you, Jason and Dennis. We'll show my screen now. All right, so staying in the Inventor environment, we're just going to look at a few things dealing with parts list and bill of materials. This is a common question we run into. Typically when we do training, we spend a lot of time with this just to make sure our users have a full understanding of what you've got here with the parts list and the bill of material. So first thing is to understand the difference between the structured and parts list options that you see inside the bill of material. You'll see those three tabs across the top of that screenshot there, model data, structured and parts only. The model data basically is listing everything. No particular or defined structure that we would see in a parts list. It's just everything. It's going to show you virtual components. It'll show your assemblies, sub-assemblies, components inside the assemblies. When you go to the other two tabs, you have the structured and the parts only, and those are basically not screenshots, but a picture of what you would get if you generated a parts list. So if you were to go in and create a parts list, you would see a structured item option as well as a parts only option. That's the same things that you're seeing here under structured and parts only. If we go into the structured, that allows us to break out various parts from subassemblies to list those as parts in the parts list, or we can set them as a different in structure, such as a phantom, like you're seeing there in the middle arm and the top arm, and they will show up listing the parts only but hiding the subassembly. So it's a way to manipulate the parts list that you want to get on your deliverable 2D drawing. Now, as I mentioned, there's some BOM structures that you can define in here. So if we were to go in and set this arm bracket base to a phantom object, then what it would do is it would take those items that you're seeing below that, the 3.1, 3.6, and so forth, down through that list, and it would promote them up to the top level. So they would show up as a line item in your parts list. However, the ones that are set to normal, like lower arm and cylinder, those would list as an individual item. So you could consider that something like a purchased item. It could be like a kit of sorts, where you don't necessarily in your BOM need to list every single part that's involved in that kit, but you need to have the kit listed on your parts list. It could be like a bearing or cylinder. You don't want to list all the components in that motor or in that bearing or cylinder, but you just want to list the item itself. And so we would set that to a normal item for that subassembly. So that's the difference between, well, that's the structured view. Then you have the parts only view, and that really just lists all parts, no subassemblies. It just takes all the parts inside there and pushes them up, promotes them all up to the top level, so that when you do a parts list of, say, 100 piece assembly or a 1,000 piece assembly, it's going to list them all out with their quantities, regardless of what subassembly they actually reside in. So when you're in your drawing, you have the option to pick between a structured or parts list or only parts list, and that's the dialog box you're seeing there. Another little trick that we run into on occasion, usually by default, people will put a view on a drawing, and they want to just get a parts list of that particular view. Well, sometimes it makes sense to put a particular, they want to detail a part, or a couple of parts on a drawing, and instead of making a drawing for each one. Well, what you can still do is, instead of selecting a view to place it, you can actually go out and select the file. So you can see the file that's listed there, the armsystem.iam. I may be just detailing a cylinder, or I may be detailing a couple of the fabricated pieces in that, but I can go into the parts list and then turn visibility off of various items, so that when it does generate, I can get just the items that I'm detailing out in the on the sheet. So that's another tip, a little trick, or option that you have. So here's what we end up looking at when we actually see something promoted up. We see when we take a subassembly or a subassembly, an assembly down inside another subassembly, and we set that to Phantom, we see those items actually promote up. So to know that you're actually promoting files up in the structured view, you'll see the blue arrows, and that's an indication of a promoted item. You'll know that you can go back to that model data and see which ones were actually set to Phantom as opposed to normal or purchase or inseparable or reference. Speaking of reference, that is another BOM structure that you have available to you. And again, the reason we're bringing this up, these are common questions we run into, and if you haven't actually taken an Inventor training, I highly recommend you do that, so that you can get all the information that you want or that you need out of the software, rather than just kind of learning it on your own. But we do spend a good bit of time on the parts list and BOMs. But as far as reference items, those you might generate a sketch that's going to be driving a frame-generated part or assembly. Well, that sketch does not need, that part file sketch does not need to be listed in your bill of material. It's simply for reference. And so if you're in the assembly, you can set it to reference, or if you're looking at the bill of materials here in the dialog box, you can set it to reference as well. And what that does is it basically removes it from the parts list so it doesn't show up. And that's a good thing to remember, to do that as well. So we're going to kind of go into a different direction here, away from bill of materials, and go into templates. And we'll talk about a few things here that are some common questions, some things people ask about dealing with templates. And that one is, where can I put my own templates? Well, obviously you can create your own custom folder, and you can create your own template. You can use the Save As Flyout menu, and that's always hitting that arrow to the right of Save As. That gives you the flyout menu, and that's where you can do a Save As template, and that allows you to save that file out as a template file. It's still an IPT, it's still an IAM, but it's located in the templates area, so that when you actually go and create a new file, it will list that. So when you create a folder, you can simply do that from that Save As Template dialog box. You don't have to close that out, go to Windows Explorer, create a folder there. This already puts you in the right location. Just right-click in a blank area down below, and you have the new folder option. So as you can see, I created one called My Stuff listed there, and that's just where I'm going to store templates that I want to use, and I can place those there. Some other things to remember about templates is all the different things that you can do with those templates. You can have sketches already defined. You can have sketches and solids already defined with name parameters. So if you find yourself creating a lot of rectangles every time you create a new sketch or a new part, you're creating a rectangle, and you're placing a length and a width and a depth or a height dimension on there, go ahead and do that in one part file. Create the sketch, name your parameters, add some iLogic to it, add some iLogic rules or forms. If you're not familiar with iLogic, Applied Software teaches that as well. We can show you how to use that, but you can use those tools to set some, make it easier for the next time you have to create a common part. So if you're going to start off with what we would consider like raw material, you got a block of this particular material that you want to define, you can go ahead and define that material, set up your name parameters, link those parameters into an iLogic form, so that really when you go in and you pick that template, you immediately go and pick the form, type in the values, select the material if it needs to change, and then you're ready to go. You're taking several steps out of the process of creating a new part or a common part, and you can do that with several things. You can do that with just block, a rectangle or a cylinder shape. You can do this even with complicated shapes. So if you find that you're doing a lot of work on a particular part, and you do it over and over, but it's just slight changes, it's basically the same shape, but a lot of slight changes, I would make that a template, add some iLogic to it, rules and forms, already define the material. And then if you want to, some things some other people do is, if you're coming over package, you might be used to seeing front, side, and front, right, left, top, and bottom, and back as plane names. I won't mention which one that is, but if you've used it, you know which one it is. And they're not used to seeing the XY plane or YZ plane. Well, you can rename those, save that in the template, so that's what you see, and have that predefined as well. So with that, I think we're going to go to questions, and I'll turn this back over to Marcia.
Thank you, gentlemen. As of right now, we don't have any additional questions. And as all the attendees know, we had asked for questions to be submitted when you registered. So I thank you, gentlemen. And to our attendees, we thank you for joining us today. And we hope you found this webinar informative and a help to improve your efficiencies. Please contact me at 404-564-1870 with any additional questions or comments. Thanks so much. Have a blessed day.